Clive Barker Podcast, audio commentaries.
Thanks to your generous donations to our Kickstarter funding campaign,
Clive Barker Podcast presents Fundraiser 8.
Welcome. This is episode 319 of the Clive Barker Podcast. We're going back to the A to Z commentaries with O for Open Vein and the 1958 Hammer horror film Horror of Dracula, which I guess is also sometimes just called Dracula, right?
In England, it was called Dracula. Yeah.
It's a classic. This is a classic.
Absolutely.
I would say.
I noticed that it seems to follow the book really well. I mean, it seems really faithful to the Bram Stoker's novel,
with a few exceptions.
Yeah. Well, it's not a bunch of letters.
We'll mention them. We'll mention the differences as we go.
Yeah, sounds good. Welcome back, Ed and Nina. And
hello. Thank you.
and Jose is here, and I'm here.
Where is here? That is the question.
Ryan Danhauser.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I'm
Danhauser in the house.
Yeah, my house in Fairbanks, Alaska. And so we're representing 3 different time zones as well. And Ed and Nina, you guys are coming from where?
The San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
Pacific time.
Don't put that responsibility on representing the Eastern time zone on me. I refuse that responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm not representing the Eastern time.
I'll represent Clive Barker fans for the Alaska time zone.
Yeah, all 2 of them.
Yeah.
It's a rainy, gloomy day here in Ohio.
And there's some fangs in your future.
I hope not.
I haven't even opened my window. I have no idea what the weather is like here yet. As we're talking, it's 8:30 in the morning. I just got up an hour ago.
Consider, if you will,
Yeah.
a man in Fairbanks, Alaska. He just woke up. He has not looked out his window. Little does he know that once he pulls the curtain, he'll see he's now residing in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, man. All right. Well, there's some Halloween content right there.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's always midnight. It's always dark for me. Luckily, I've seen this film a billion times. I love Hammer films.
This was my first time watching it on Thursday, I think it was, that I saw it.
I'm trying to remember what was the first Hammer film that I ever saw. And I think I remember, I might be wrong, but do you know that Frankenstein movie where there's a Frankenstein that has no neck and he's super hairy?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a Hammer film? I don't know what.
Yes.
It's one of the sequels, right, of the Frankenstein Hammer.
I think that's the one called Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed or something.
Yeah. And then he ends up getting chopped into bloody bits.
Yeah, he's very hairy. That's a very furry.
He's like an orangutan Frankenstein. Yeah. No, I think that was the first movie I saw from Hammer Films when I was a kid.
Frankatang.
Yeah. That's right. There's a really good documentary called Hammer, the Studio That Dripped Blood. It's from 1987. I think it's from the BBC, and you can probably find it on YouTube. We'll link it up in the show notes.
The same year that Hellraiser came out.
That's right, yeah. It's a great little documentary. They still have a lot of old people from the Hammer studio times. They managed to interview some of the people who ran the studio and stuff and wrote scripts.
They were still alive back then.
It was kind of a small enterprise in the beginning, and even when people were still watching those movies in the 60s and stuff, they were still kind of small. They were always kind of they were not as big as MGM, studios and stuff. We'll talk a little bit about the Bray Studios where they recorded this movie, The Horror of Dracula, and several movies, always using the same locations, just making it really clever.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Oh, and for those just joining us or haven't been following this series, the reason that we're the Clive Barker Podcast talking about a Hammer movie is because Clive Barker made a book called Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror. and every letter of the alphabet was recommendations for different horror things that he thought were cool or inspiring. And in the letter O for Open Vein, there were movies about Dracula. And this is the one
of course,
that we picked.
Of course, Clive being British and growing up in England, Hammer is huge for the growing up of all the young, British horror fans.
Yeah.
Every person that you can think of, like Pete Atkins, Doug Bradley, like all of them, they all grew up watching this stuff on the telly.
Yeah, right. The television really brought a new generation into the studio and their movies. We all watch this stuff on TV.
And if you want to follow along, did I say this already? It's available on HBO Max. So for anybody that subscribes to that, you can get it there. Or if you have a Blu-ray or DVD or videotape or however, I think there's even a copy on YouTube that might be questionably legal.
But it's free.
Yeah.
There always is.
Yeah, so you can follow along with us and watch this movie with us if you want to.
So we're queued up, right?
Yeah. So the place where we're starting is right when that eagle statue shows up on the screen and says a Hammer horror production.
Mine has captions and says thunderous instrumental music.
So travel back in time with us.
Yeah.
As we
to 1958.
Yeah, I think Nina, when was the last? You haven't done the countdown in a while.
Oh my. All right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
There we go.
And play.
Okay.
Now, music is really important to these films. I really love the music of the Hammer films.
I like this font, too, with Peter Cushing's name there.
And the blood.
Dracula.
There's
Great
a lot of
use
blood.
color. Yes.
I mean, it's James Bernard, composer. He worked on a lot of Hammer films as well. He started with the Quatermass Experiment and scored a lot of classic films. The Curse of Frankenstein, which I think was one of the first classic monster films that Hammer made, and Dracula.
Yep, and Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in the first Frankenstein one, where Christopher Lee played the monster.
Editor was James Needs, who also edited pretty much all of these Hammer films. They were a very small, tight kind of team, and they shot this at Bray Studios, where they shot a lot of them.
Terrence Fisher was the director.
Right.
And he directed so many beautiful Hammer films. I mean, color was their beautiful, plus, because, of course, we had the Universal classics all in black and white, which, are very gothic. But when we come into the color era, Hammer took over. It was like, oh my God, the blood.
Yeah, it looks like red paint.
Yes, but back then nobody cared. It was like you didn't really have any other blood to compare it to,
Yeah, I remember the first time I noticed that, I think, was Dawn of the Dead. That blood in that movie is almost kind of an orangey color.
Yes, that was because it came from a particular company called 3M back then. They had this, stage blood that you could buy. And, later on, Tom Savini and the crews started making their own blood. But when they bought it, it had that kind of orangey tint.
So the movie has some serious differences with the book, right? The Bram Stoker book, because at the time, I think when they decided they were going to do Frankenstein, they felt that they had to do it differently from what Universal Studios had done, and the same for Dracula. So if they put in anything in the movie that was taken off of the Universal Dracula or that was not in the book of Bram Stoker, and they had used it for the Universal Dracula, then they would get an injunction and shut down.
Really?
So they really played around with the story a lot. Like in here, Jonathan Harker, he is applying for a job to be Dracula's librarian. He's not coming in to sell him any real estate. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big difference from the novel.
And he comes with the intention of destroying him.
And instead of arriving at night on a ghostly carriage, he comes in at day, walking around beautiful little creek, and he just walks into the castle of Count Dracula.
And another interesting thing is that, what is correct from the novel to this movie is that they're using the device of his diary.
Yeah,
which is
that was
similar
it was an epistolary novel, so it's based on letters and writings and stuff. Which back then most fiction started out that way because they thought that was the only way to make fiction believable.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So for an old book, to have that similar opening in this movie, I think as a literary fan, Christopher Lee, he was a big Tolkien fan. He was a big Bram Stoker fan. So he did not want to participate in things that Hammer would do that would break away from the traditional literary version. So, in fact, one of the things that he complained about later on was he wouldn't even say the dialogue that they had written. There's another Dracula film that comes after this one where he has practically no dialogue at all.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the second sequel, because the next sequel after this, I don't think Dracula even appears at all. It's Peter Cushing comes back as
right. They got a different
Nielsen.
actor altogether to play the vampire.
Oh.
Yeah. So great set work here.
Beautiful. I love the twisty pillars.
And for anybody that watched another movie with us, they will recognize this mansion immediately from The Devil Rides Out.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things about Hammer that was wonderful, I think, was the art direction. And the thing about art direction and set direction is, unfortunately, when you have a very low budget, you got to be creative. And so they would reuse the same sets and the same set dressings, the same pieces of furniture, tapestries, candlesticks, things like that. But they would rearrange them and light them differently and shoot them from different angles and stuff. But, the clever viewer can spot, the similarities from film to film.
That crest above the wall was Fidelis ad Mortis. What would that be, like life and death?
Faith in death? Loyalty in death?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Latin.
Yeah.
I can Google that.
The devil hates Latin, I hear.
Fidelis ad mortem means faithful unto death or loyal unto death.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of a double meaning.
Especially for an undead creature.
Yeah.
Some of the other similarities from the novel, which are interesting, is like, okay, Jonathan Harker arrives, he's supposed to be the librarian, and, he is in the book and in, like the Coppola version, he's locked into his room and told not to wander the halls, that it's very dangerous and blah, blah, blah. And then, there's the vampire brides, which are loose in the castle at night.
Speaking of which.
Yeah, he just met one.
Right now.
Yeah, the couletage. The censors for Hammer would write stuff on these movie reviews saying, that all the women should be dressed decently and there should be no sexual innuendo of any sort. And boy, did they try. Like she's saying that Dracula's keeping her prisoner and she's looking very damsel in distress.
Very, very Lily
Innocent.
Munster, that dress.
She's very innocent.
I love that dress.
Yeah.
Help me. Help me.
In a way, I guess kind of Julia's dress in Hellbound kind of has echoes of like these dresses of fatale ladies in like Hammer films, right?
Classic lines of a femme fatale.
Yeah, I would say so.
The other cool thing too is,
here he comes.
The coffins and the crypts and, the other pieces of set dressing and stuff like that, the coaches, the carriages and stuff. I love all that.
Here's the very matter-of-fact entrance of Dracula. He shows up at the top of the stairs in shadow, and then he just, swiftly tiptoes down the stairs, comes over and said, "Hello, I'm Dracula." And that's it.
And he glides. He kind of floats whenever you see him,
He's 6'4", Christopher Lee. He's 6'4", and I think the first Hammer film that he did was Curse of Frankenstein. They were looking for a really tall, imposing guy, and there was not a lot of dialogue. And Christopher Lee had done theater and mime and all that stuff, so he was the perfect choice to play Frankenstein. So that's how he got his first job at Hammer.
Yes, and I believe the makeup artist who did his makeup was a guy by the name of Roy Ashcroft or Ashton or something like that. And he did all the Hammer films. He also, Christopher Lee later played the Mummy with a very extensive heavy makeup as well.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee kind of became the Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff of Hammer films, right?
Oh, yes. You could make
There's always
Absolutely.
this creature and creator, or creature and hunter. There was always this kind of dynamic between the two of them.
And they loved it. They were such good friends, off screen, off camera. When they would sit and have tea and stuff, it was funny that it was well known that they loved stuff like Warner Brothers cartoons, and they would imitate Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Yosemite Sam and stuff. Could you imagine, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing sitting there going like, "Rah! What's up, Doc?"
It's interesting, this scene in the bedroom. It's so cold in there, you can see their breath when they're talking.
Yeah,
that's a cool effect. I mean, look at The Exorcist and other movies that have done that.
So this was Bray Studios, and next to Bray Studios was this house called Oakley Court, which was used in so many Hammer films, so many exteriors and interiors. Oakley Court in Bray was also Frankenfurter's Castle in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, that's cool.
So this part I thought was kind of nonsense. If he's there to destroy Dracula, why is he putting out a picture of his wife? He just put her in danger.
That's from the novel, though. It's like Nina or whoever his girlfriend is. He has a locket or something. Even in the Keanu Reeves one, where he opens a little book. I mean, a little thing, and there's a picture, and then Dracula's like over his shoulder and spots it, and it's the old she's like the reincarnation of the lost love of mine.
Hey, and not just that. Here's another weird thing. So in this movie, Harker's fiance is Lucy, not Nina. So they switched it around, and Lucy Arthur is
switched.
Yeah, isn't that weird that they switched that? Because it's a major thing in the book, and here they switched it.
He still goes after both of them, though.
He does.
And I think, Terrence Fisher may have written this as well as directed, and if so, it's like, I think perhaps, that's one of the things, Christopher Lee complains about is how they change things from the books, but maybe they didn't have the rights, like you were saying. I know that the Universal films, the design of Frankenstein, the square, boxy head of
they could not use that. Version. Yeah, Jack Pierce's makeup. Yeah. Yep.
It's interesting. The concept of remakes, I guess, was not a thing back then.
Well, they thought that since it was like, maybe over 25 years since they had made a movie that it was time to do another one. But it's funny because when I saw the Hammer Studio, The Drip Blood, there's a writer there and he's saying, and now, I think I hear that people are trying to make a remake of Dracula and Frankenstein again, but it's like, honestly, I think this has all been played out so far that I don't think there's any point in making any other remakes of these stories. And boy, was he wrong.
Yeah.
People keep going back to this, even as recently as a couple of years ago, right? When they were trying to launch the Dark Universe with Universal Studios. And they did a piss poor job. And
it's funny that every time there's a retelling of Dracula, he seems to get more powerful, right? I mean, like in this one, the way he dies seems a little easy, compared to what you would see today. How hard it would be.
Well, what's interesting about that is that, from vampire to vampire, I mean, of course, Dracula is the proto-vampire, but the concepts, and all that, like when we did the Vampire Lestat, when we talked about Interview with the Vampire and stuff, from vampire to vampire, from movie to movie, Lost Boys, the old original, silent Nosferatu to, the Werner Herzog remake of Nosferatu.
With Klaus Kinski. I love that movie.
And even the one, with Willem Dafoe, the Shadow of the Vampire. I mean, like you say, like these stories, these classic vampire, Frankenstein type stories, they're going to be remade for hundreds of years. I think, they're not going to go away, and it's just a matter of how creative you can be and how original. You can change the vampire lore. I mean, look at how many changes we've seen through movie to movie. Sometimes, they can go out in the daylight, like in the Twilight films, Yeah. Sometimes, they are afraid of a cross. Sometimes they're not afraid of a cross. You have to have, some stories, you have to have faith to, like a Jewish star will work if you're a Jew, or, like the concept of, can they turn into a werewolf or a vampire bat or, mist or rats or, what's the lore? What's the law? What's the rules,
I think that if I can add to that, the vampire, some of these stories are almost like archetypal in the tropes and the horror that they induce, right? I mean, look at the vampire. There's so many things there's a confluence of scary things that go into the vampire. One, he takes away your agency because he can hypnotize you. Second one, he feeds on you. So there's also that weird thing about cannibalism, about being eaten, about being, consumed by the monster. And Clive Barker said once that appetite marks the monster, such as celibacy marks the nun. Yeah. And what other monster has a more literal approach to the appetite being, the thing that lustful, and not just that, but he eats you. He eats your blood. He consumes you. He consumes you. And werewolf, it's funny because werewolves, lycanthropy, I know that they were like stories about werewolves in old texts, but the movie that was made, the lore kind of got created with the movies, right? I mean, I don't think there was a major werewolf novel that was super popular like Dracula.
But what I mean is that how Dracula in the novel can turn into a wolf.
Right.
That's true. Turn into bats, and shapeshift.
But then there will be crazy rules like they can't cross a running stream, or you have to invite
or you have
them
to
into
be
your
invited.
house.
Yeah, you have to invite them into your house. Is that in this book? Do you know, Joe?
No, I think the running water is in the third Dracula movie. Oh, here we go. Here's snarling Christopher Lee. He's attacking the vampire woman, and she was played by Valerie Gaunt, who she's also in The Curse of Frankenstein. Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Hammer actors, that many of them play many different roles in all the different films,
And they're not just beautiful, but they're fucking scary. Yeah, Valerie Gaunt, born in 1932.
It's funny.
Died in 2016.
And Barker's white knighting the heck out of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hammer women were gorgeous, though. I mean, they were some of the main reasons why people went to see these films. You could see breasts in films,
And not just that, but instead of 3 brides, we have 1. And here he just, he's just taking her away. In some other sequels, he actually stabs the heck out of his own bride in one of the sequels and then drinks her blood. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. There's even you were saying, Ryan, that they keep making Dracula stronger and stronger. I think it's like Dracula 1972, where Dracula all of a sudden is like this conspiratorial guy behind a corporation to
the satanic one,
satanic oriented corporation. They're going to release a bacteria plague, and then Peter Cushing is saying something like he's resentful and he wants to die and he wants to finish his misery. He wants to take the whole universe with him. I was like, whoa, the universe. There you go.
Yeah, that one I think is called Dracula 1972 AD.
Right. Which is a terrible movie. Don't bother with that. There are worse ones. There's at least one Hammer film that doesn't even have Christopher Lee come back as Dracula. It's some other guy with really bad makeup.
Well, I'm a fan of all of them. Even what most people think are bad Hammer films, I still love them. And including, like, for instance, there's one that Christopher Lee isn't in at all, and it's a vampire movie, and it's got Peter Cushing. It's the Seven Golden Vampires.
Right,
it's a martial arts mixture. It's really, I love it because I love martial arts and I love, Chinese kung fu movies and stuff. And it's a cool mixture, a hybrid. The hopping vampires are a very interesting film phenomenon as well,
Bless Peter Cushing. He always gave his total, best in every movie, even if it was a turkey. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
I know. I love him in the Tales from the Crypt feature film where he comes back as a zombie corpse with holes for his eye sockets, no eyeballs.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jonathan Harker is looking into a mirror and is realizing that after the events of last night, he was bitten and he's got 2 holes in his neck. And I think this is the part where he's going to do some exposition about why he's really here, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. He's going to get out his journal and...
Yeah. So far, he has not despaired too much because we're going to find out that he's here because he wants to be here. He wants to. He's on a mission.
He's on a vampire hunt.
Yeah.
Which he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have acted all indignant and crazy when Dracula was grabbing that bride. If he knew what was going on, he should have just stood back and waited.
Yeah. I have become a victim of Dracula and the woman in his power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here comes the exposition, guys.
You know what else I was? You know what else I was talking with Nina about was? Are you guys very familiar with the other vampire Dracula movies, like the Frank Langella one?
Oh, the Frank Langella? I don't think so. I think I might have seen a bit of it on TV years ago.
It's the 70s, right?
Yeah, maybe 80s.
The interesting thing is, Frank Langella, you see him now, he's this old man, he's this, fat, rounded old dude, who he's still very cool and great actor and everything. But man, look at him as Dracula. He was so young and handsome.
It's 1979.
79, but
yeah,
you got it. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't.
I all I can remember about that movie is the scene where he opens the window and climbs in. And you can definitely see the little system that they put in to pump little streams of dry ice on top of the window, on the outside of the window. You see each individual spout just spout out dry ice as he comes into the window. And I always notice that. And I'm like, oh, boy, that's not very good effect.
Those are the days of physical effects only.
Yeah.
No CGI.
Look at that. There's running water you have to cross to even get into the castle.
Good catch, Ryan. Yeah, there is.
He puts his diary in the little Mary grotto. Did you catch that?
Mm.
Yeah, that's the little Our Lady. See, because
it's a
Dracula won't put his hand in that little grotto because it's got the cross and Our Lady.
Yeah.
Maybe the running water is also part of it.
In these Hammer sequels, Dracula does tend to pick some really weird sites for his headquarters that have crosses and stuff. There's one where he actually is using a church. It's the one where he comes back to life by some guy drinking his ashes mixed with blood, and then he turns into Christopher Lee. You remember that one, Ed?
Yeah.
Drink the blood of Dracula, I think.
Everyone knows you killed Dracula first.
True.
But Jonathan just can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
I mean, how stupid. It's like he had one of two, he could kill one, but not both,
Yeah.
So you kill the big one first,
Yeah, she already bit him anyway. What's she going to do this time?
He's saving the best for last. But, like the posters.
This is his fatal mistake.
What are you going to do? Use harsh language?
Yeah.
Like the post. He's being a gentleman. Ladies first,
Yeah.
But even the movie posters say he's been burned. He's been he had a stake ran across his heart, but you can't keep a good man down. And then it's like Dracula, the second sequel. I think that's the poster for it.
Wow. So wait, the sequel to this movie has him coming back to life after he turned into dust?
No, actually, the next movie is not even Christopher Lee, and it's a vampire, but it's not Dracula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the next one is The Brides of Dracula. It has Peter Cushing, and then after that, it's a direct sequel to the ending of this one. They even play a little bit of the ending of this one. It's called Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Oh.
That's a good one. That's really good.
Yeah, it is, because you got both of them back, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with this one, too. I mean, I love the ending. I love, like you say, it might be that Dracula kind of goes down a little easy, but I still love it. Like when you see the way Dracula dies in this film, I studied that as well as other films where they kill, someone with like a melting effect, like where they dissolve and then turn to dust and stuff.
I don't think that it's too easy. I just think that over the years there have been so many movies with Dracula that he's almost become a god, because they add to his mystique and his power every time. And then they make it so you think putting him in the sunlight's going to kill him, but he actually survived, and
well,
because he's the original first vampire.
They keep figuring out ways to bring him back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But,
I hated Blade 3, where Dracula was the bad guy. That was the worst Blade movie.
I don't think I've seen it.
Unfortunately, that was written by our friend who was supposedly helping with the new Hellraiser.
Oh, really?
The Lionsgate. Yeah,
Yeah.
Now here we are at the slaughtered lamb.
Very much like Black Sunday, also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mario Bava kind of got inspired by the Dracula Hammer film.
Films in general, yeah.
So definitely. I was going to ask that: is this the same bar from Bloody Sunday? And
it's not the same.
I don't think so, because
that's in Italy. That one was either in Italy or Spain.
And Dracula's crypt looked a lot like the one in Bloody Sunday too.
Well, it's just art direction.
I think, like I said, that Mario Bava, was inspired by this one.
Heavily.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But in fact, the Bava films are in similar way, to Hammer, when they use real abbeys and churchyards, graveyards that are old and stuff. In England, you luckily have real architecture, real old architecture. And in Europe, in Italy, where they did the Bava films and stuff, they also were luckily, they could get real old churchyards and, ruins and things. So they had much better production values with these European real locations,
Look at Van Helsing's swanky jacket with the fur collar.
Yeah.
Like Candyman.
Exactly.
Like Candyman. Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's like he later met Daniel Robitaille and gave him his jacket.
Yeah. Because all the ladies like a sharp-dressed man.
I know.
This innkeeper doesn't want to tell him about Harker. Is this because he's afraid that they'll bring Dracula down on them?
Well, yeah. I mean, in every movie, the pub, they're always afraid of Dracula. They always, nobody talks. There's you never say his name. If you do mention him, he's talked about, kind of without saying his name and stuff. Like Sauron and Saruman in Lord of the Rings and stuff.
It's always better to not. Everybody went up to the castle, forget they ever existed. Nobody should go up there, because in Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, it all starts. Because I don't know which one of you said that. When did the running water thing start with Dracula? I think it was the next direct sequel for this movie. It's in Dracula Prince of Darkness, where they kill Dracula by throwing him into a frozen moat. And
the ice breaks.
Yeah,
and there's a bunch of great stories about the stuntman. There was a hidden underwater bottle of oxygen or air. Like a scuba diver tank, and he went under the water and looked around for it and couldn't find it, and so there was a dangerous stunt for that.
Oh, I didn't know that. There's a little bit of a snippet of behind the scenes at Bray Studios that I found on YouTube, where they're exactly showing that scene, and there's a commentary by Christopher Lee and some other people working in the movie. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Is he just going to eat an entire loaf of bread?
That's his personal loaf.
Yeah.
It's your personal.
I think in the old days, people would just go into a tavern and get a big chunk of cheese and some bread and just eat that, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Hobbit food. Good Hobbit food.
And wine.
Yep. So he's got Jonathan Harker's diary now.
Yeah.
And the reason I was going to say, the reason why the villagers never want anybody to go up to Dracula's castle is that there's a priest in Dracula Has Risen from the Grave who wants to go up to the castle to put a cross on the door. And he goes there with another priest that slips and falls into the moat and cracks the ice where Dracula is and bleeds right into his mouth. Right. And that's how he comes back.
Geez.
Yeah.
Should not have gone there.
That sort of reminds me, like in how Clive in Rawhead Rex, he wrote about this church and a priest, and Rawhead, how the priest sort of worships the Rawhead Rex monster, and Rawhead Rex pisses on him and stuff, and it's like that is sort of in the Hammer films. There are priests that have become under the sway of Dracula and
corrupted,
have a similar relationship with the monster in a way.
Taste the Blood of Dracula takes place in a church that this mystical guy has turned into a Satan worshipping temple. And you guys were talking how sometimes Dracula's deaths are a little anticlimactic. And I'm spoiling the heck out of these Hammer films. But in Taste the Blood of Dracula, there's not even a showdown with anybody when Dracula dies. He just runs back into the church that he's brought back from. And there's a church window that has a cross. And it shines on him. And he falls around, looks at all the crosses in the church, and turns into dust.
Oops, I shouldn't have gone in here.
Yeah. So he found the castle and he found the picture of Lucy, which is conspicuously missing from the frame.
Oh yeah, and Dracula really trashed his room.
Yeah, probably looking for the diary.
Threw a TV out of the window into the moat, all sorts of things. Left cocaine bumps on the bathtub.
Yeah. Dracula from the Who.
In this movie is where is the scene, like in the Frank Langella one where Dracula climbs up the wall, like a defying gravity, like Spider-Man, and in this movie or in one of the other Dracula movies,
he does
the
do
castle is inaccessible. Like when Jonathan Harker looks out the window, it's so high up and it's such a sheer cliff drop. There's no way, that he can get out, Cool.
Yeah, those wonderful
Dracula
hammer
can.
Glass paintings. Yeah.
But Dracula can't. Dracula can climb right up that wall.
That seems like it would be undignified for Christopher Lee Dracula to do that.
He does at one point climb. We see him climbing a wall. Oh, there's Jonathan Harker with the fangs. He's been taken.
Yeah.
But there is a scene where Christopher Lee does climb a wall in the Hammer Dracula movies.
In this one?
No.
I'm not sure if it's in this one. I'm a little confused because I've seen so many of these, but there is a scene where he does do that. Not in this movie, I think. Oh, and Van Helsing is going to have to put his friend out of his misery.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was nice of Dracula to leave that stuff lying around.
Right?
I wonder if he could even touch it.
Yeah. Well, it's a
stake
and a hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe because they're blessed or something, maybe he can't touch it.
Oh, right. In the Bram Stoker movie book. Wait, is this in the Bram Stoker book where they can seal like things with like holy
water or
and stuff?
Eucharist. Yeah. In the one with Frank Langella, it's Sir Laurence Olivier is playing Van Helsing, and there's an interesting scene where he actually has a holy Eucharist, a host, and he breaks it into pieces and does a prayer and puts it in the dirt that's inside Dracula's coffin and makes his coffin unusable.
Right. So here's a bit of trivia for all you non-Catholics out there that don't realize this. You cannot sell blessed sacramental items. But you can take them to a church and get them blessed. Right. So when you buy a rosary in a store, it's not blessed.
Yeah.
And then you can go get it blessed. Yeah. But the store doesn't sell.
It comes from China.
That's why like Madonna's jewelry and stuff was not blasphemous because it wasn't blessed,
But in Dracula films, all these things are blessed. She blessed them herself.
Yeah.
She's pretty blasphemous.
So here's Arthur. His character name is Arthur Holmwood. And here he's played by, I forgot his name. Gosh, he's such a well-known actor. Michael Gough.
Yeah, he's in tons of Hammer films.
Yeah.
Playing villains, playing good guys, playing police detectives, all sorts of stuff.
Sure. And he's if you're more familiar with the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, he's the American guy with a big knife and gun. But here he's the Arthur Holmwood, who's usually engaged to Lucy, but here he's engaged to Mina. That's the thing that I mentioned at the beginning.
Right. In the Coppola version, he's the guy who's got a big Bowie knife, and that's one of the things they kill Dracula with. And he also has like a rifle, like a Remington or a Winchester rifle or something,
In the book, I think Dracula is killed by a couple of stabs with knives, right? It's not the stake through the heart.
Right.
I don't think so.
I think they sever his head in the book. You know?
Yeah, probably, yeah. But I think
I haven't read it since college.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I think they had to bury his head and his body in two separate places.
And, I wonder if Doug will read Bram Stoker's Dracula because he read Frankenstein, Shelley's Frankenstein.
It would be easier it would be a shorter book than Frankenstein.
Yeah, all those old stories and even Lovecraft and Poe and stuff, they're a bit hard for modern audiences to listen to, I think, because they're not used to the old language.
Yeah. And it's tough to read everything from the point of view of letters. It's kind of like the found footage movies, right? It's like, okay, well, this guy's already dead.
It's a certain window into the story, and for some people, that's not a good way to see it.
If you watch the when they came out, it was the Universal Monsters collection that Universal put out.
I've got those, yeah.
I was lucky enough, I think I mentioned this before, but David J. Skal is a movie historian.
Yeah, he was on the Creature Feature show here in the Bay Area just this last weekend as a guest.
He's amazing. He has such great insight. A lot of those legacy collections from Universal, and I know this is not Hammer, but he made a lot of commentary tracks for this. He made some featurettes about the classic monsters, and he talks a lot about Bram Stoker.
Books. He wrote a lot of books.
And one time I got to buy from him through Facebook his personal DVD set with all the legacy collection of the monsters, and he was kind enough to throw in an autographed photo in there for me.
Oh, that's nice.
I have his personal copy that he had in his office. I'm just downsizing. Who was interested in this? It was a really good price, and I bought it from him.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, right here in the Bay Area, we have a TV show called Creature Features that a friend of mine is the host for, and he flies people up, from L.A., actors and writers and stuff, directors, and he just was here last weekend.
Here's Van Helsing listening to a dictaphone exposition about how, number one, vampires don't like garlic. 3, the crucifix, symbolizing the power of good or evil.
This because these dictaphone things, these are like wax cylinders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's got the big funnel thing to amplify the noise.
But isn't that his own voice? I mean, he's just listening to himself and making notes.
No, I don't think so. I don't
think it was his own voice.
It sounded like it was his voice.
I don't think so. I think it's someone else.
He was taking notes off of it.
That's why I thought it was kind of crazy.
Yeah. And look at that fancy, purple velvet suit that he's got on. That looks great.
His smoking jacket.
Yeah.
And
his man works for Starbucks.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. He's got the green apron. Oh my God, you jumped on that. It's so cool.
You caught that, huh?
I'm sorry.
He's a barista.
If you excuse me, I'm late for my shift at Starbucks.
Listen here, old chap. I said 2 pumps of caramel in my Starbucks latte. So good. So good.
Was he not recording himself, making a wax cylinder?
He's listening to it right now. I don't know if he recorded it.
Yeah.
His suit, by the way, is reminiscent also of one of Frodo's outfits in Lord of the Rings, I must say.
Oh, you think so? Yeah, the crushed velvet. Yeah, except the Frodo one is green.
I know because my friends made some replicas of the costumes, and so they had to go searching for fabric.
There was a completely some of these actors were such gentlemen, and Peter Cushing, everybody who knew him always says that he was a delightful fellow, a sweet man, and losing his wife really left him very, very sad. And there's a picture of the last time Peter Cushing met Christopher Lee, and he's just so old, but he's still immaculately dressed with a lovely cobalt blue jacket and a little shirt and
he is recording
tie.
Into it right now.
Oh, there he is.
So that was his voice on the.
I don't think so. I think those were somebody else's voice. It might have even been the director's voice, or a different actor. But I just think that he is recording his own as well.
Well, in any case, I think he's reviewing the stuff about vampires.
Yeah.
Right. And, what's great about that is that such a thing existed. Like the fact that he could get this information, this research on these wax cylinders. That's amazing.
So here's my question to you guys. It seems like every Hammer film has Dracula's castle in England.
Yeah.
So they make him like English in a way, right? I don't think they ever say that he's from Transylvania, that he's a foreign. They always say Count Dracula, like he's some weird English aristocrat that lives in like remote England.
Yeah.
Well, he moved to England.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that because the fact that, it's only a 90-minute movie or whatever, it's like you just can't delve into that aspect. You got to just move on with the story and the plot.
Yeah,
and
because
you can't dwell on where he's from or if he's a foreigner or anything. I mean, the black and white Universal one, they definitely do say that he's from Romania.
Well, yeah,
and Jonathan Harker does bring all these boxes of earth, to Carfax Abbey and all that.
Yeah.
I have a theory about this, which is here's my theory, completely unfundamented, but I think they cut several major things off of the book. Like, for example, Dracula doesn't travel on a boat to England. Right. There's not even a Renfield or anything like that in this whole story. I think they probably didn't have the budget for a boat sequence, and that's why they decided to just take it out and just put Dracula in England. That's just my theory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's funny that if he moved from Romania to England, that you'd think he would change his name and said, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Dracula."
Hello. My name is Mr. Alucard.
Well, I think that also the issue is that if you have such a limited budget and you're going to have limited locations, then you definitely can't have a budget for a travel sequence on the ocean or anything like that. Yeah. And the fact that they have like basically his castle, his interior, his tavern, the tavern scene, and that's about it. Like what other locations do they have?
Yeah, that red stripy chair is really messing with the video.
No, the aliasing is kind of making it. Yeah.
When she was sitting down in it, the stripes got all kind of wavy and weird.
Yeah, she's got a great little fur muff. She got her hands in.
It's when an anchorman goes on some sports segment and he's got a striped jacket and it just makes the TV go weird.
Yeah.
Right.
Moray patterns.
Yeah.
So the reason why Dracula came to visit Nina is because, of course, he tracked Mr. Harker and he was like, "Hey, your fiance is kind of hot. Let me go see what's going on over there."
That picture he got.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I said Mina. I meant Lucy. Lucy. Yeah.
Well, that's where the switcheroo. That's what confuses people.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's okay. Speaking of Starbucks and names, I've gotten many, many Minas at Starbucks.
Oh, yeah, Mina? Yeah.
Yes. Nina has received many Minas.
Ironically, too, she did a painting of the, was it Mina or Lucy that you painted, the Coppola one?
Oh, I did. It was Lucy. I did her orange bodice.
In her death dress, towards...
I'd need to see that movie again. I haven't seen it since it came out.
Oh, we have it on DVD.
Oh, yeah. I remember it was pretty good.
Oh, they also... And the clothing in that one is also like this. It's like a Hammer film. Very lush.
Well, yeah. I have a book by, the designer of the costumes. A whole book just of the costumes.
Lots of satin, lots of velvet.
Christopher
Can't
Lee.
Look at it anymore.
Yeah. Christopher Lee played Dracula several times. He, like you said at the beginning, and I think that he sometimes, there's this legend or rumor that some of the movies that he doesn't speak at all, like there are movies from the Dracula Hammer series where he says not a word.
Right.
And the legend goes that he just didn't like the dialogues.
That's right.
He hated it so much he didn't even want to say it. But he didn't like coming back to all these sequels, but his reasoning was, he said in an interview once, is that he didn't want to put all those people out of a job. Because if he wasn't going to be in it, then probably they wouldn't make the movie. And then,
Yeah, I mean, the film people from Hammer, they literally blackmailed him. They told him, there's about 100 and something people that are going to be out of work if you say no to be in the next Dracula film that we want to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a nice man who valued his fellow actors' livelihoods, you know, he said yes, even though it was against his better judgment.
Yeah. I wonder if he would have had the power to rewrite the scripts then, if he could do that.
He did to a degree, in the sense that he wouldn't say dialogue that he did not approve of. You know?
Kind of reminds me of Doug Bradley rewriting some of his dialogue as Pinhead because he thought it wasn't good enough.
Right,
I
yeah,
think
it's a lot
probably
like
made
that.
some improvements. I think Doug probably made some improvements. I mean, you know, Pete, I've talked to Pete about it. You know, Pete wrote some great stuff, you know, that Doug said verbatim, you know, but once in a while, you know, there'd be some changes here and there, and it would be mostly improvements.
Well, and more in the later sequels too is where, you know, like Inferno, I think he wrote in some more dialogue, and 6. He rewrote a lot of his dialogue in 6.
Right. And, you know, of course, Pete had to rewrite stuff for 4, you know, for Bloodline.
Yeah.
So here's Luke in bed, surrounded by garlic flowers, and having a really bad time.
Yep.
Because, of course, Dr. Van Helsing is on the job.
Yep. And that pesky maid. She's going to come in and wreak havoc again.
I kind of don't get why he put these flowers, because it's like if he knows she's bitten by a vampire, it's just going to torture her, but it's not like it's going to cure her.
No,
I
but
think it's to prevent Dracula from coming back.
Oh, I see.
I mean, he will come back, but he'll not be able to get in because the window's closed.
That makes
the
sense.
flowers are all around the bed, all around the room. And that stupid maid. I mean, it's like she single-handedly it causes her death, you know?
Way to go, Gerda.
Yeah, it's like one scene, she's fine. She's just whining a bit about, like, oh, take him away. And it's like, no, the doctor said no. I'm going to sit here all night with you,
I'm
you
just
dummy.
going to remove these ones by the window first.
I would have put nails in the sash if I were Van Helsing.
Put some crosses above the window.
Get her out of the only room in the house that's got windows. Put her in the room with no windows, you know? Make her sleep in the living room by the fireplace with everyone sitting around her. You know, it's like, really?
Gerda comes in and says, oh, it's so stuffy in here. And Lucy says, sorry, I farted. Oh, boy, she's dead. They're pulling the sheet over her face.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that
Lee
commercial
played
where the girl gets in the car not realizing there was a bunch of people sitting in the back seat and the guy hasn't gotten into the front seat yet, and she lets out a big fart, and then he gets in and all of a sudden the people in the back seat say you know, and she realizes they were there the whole time.
And Van Helsing looking over the sheet and saying, yep, she's dead. It was Nosferatu. Das Vampir.
My first clue was that somebody put a blanket over her face.
It seems like she smothered herself to death. Case closed. Gerda, you're fired. Get out of here.
Yeah, I know. After she said that.
I know, she's not fired. Later on, she does something else stupid. I forget what else she does.
No, nobody got mad at her either. They're just like, oh, those servants.
That maid union really worked for her buck.
Yeah.
So Dracula, Christopher Lee played Dracula not just in the Hammer films, but he also ended up doing some other roles of Dracula.
Italian.
Dracula and Son.
Yep. Between this and the next time he played Dracula in an Italian film.
Okay, and then he also did in '76 Dracula and Son, which is a comedy.
Right.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in some comedic roles. Like there was this crazy film done here in California about like the Marin County, you know, hot tub scene and stuff. And he shows up in that as a biker, a gay biker, you know, amongst like 5 or 6 other, you know, gay biker gang guys in this weird American California comedy.
Really?
And of course, the man with the golden gun, and he played, you know, Rasputin.
Scaramanga.
He played in Sherlock Holmes' smarter brother as his brother, Mycroft Holmes.
Oh yeah, Mycroft.
He played Fu Manchu in several Hammer Fu Manchu films.
Problematic.
Yeah, nowadays for sure. Like if you know anything about that Shang-Chi film, Shang-Chi is supposed to be the son of Fu Manchu.
Fu Manchu, yeah.
Is this a good time to tell the story about the ferry ride in Hong Kong?
Sure. What's the story?
Christopher Lee was working on the film. Yeah, he was working on Fu Manchu, and he was all in makeup because they didn't have makeup over on the set.
Yeah, and of course, he has Oriental eyelids and everything all.
So they did Oriental eyelids and glued on and everything, and he had to ride the ferry over to the set. So he was in full makeup.
In Hong Kong, they were filming in Hong Kong.
So a gentleman tried to speak Chinese to him, and he said, "I'm not Chinese, I'm British." And the gentleman goes, "Oh, no, but you are Chinese." And he goes, No, really, I'm not. This is a makeup. He goes, "Oh, what is your name?" Lee.
Ah! That makes it hard to believe.
So Christopher Lee likes to tell that story himself, like on talk shows and stuff.
Oh, man.
My name is Lee.
Yeah.
So you are Chinese.
Yeah.
So the production for this movie began at Bray Studios on November 57, and they had an investment of 81,000 Great Britain pounds. And I did the math to calculate inflation. That would amount to like maybe 2 million pounds today. That would be the budget for the movie.
That's a decent budget for that time period.
Man.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, on the low scale, of course, it's not a Hollywood, lavish production or anything. But I believe, for these films, they really got their bang for their buck. I mean, it's on the screen, when they knew how to shoot stuff, they knew how to be economical in their camera work and their setups per day and everything,
And these old directors like Terrence Fisher, they practically mastered the idea of editing in the can. So they would be very economical with film. They knew what they wanted to shoot. They shot it. Okay, done. Let's move on to the next sequence. And it would really save time on editing. They wouldn't have all those hundreds of yards of film to cut.
Right, because it was such a small crew. He would, not only most of the time write, but direct, produce, and then also edit,
Yeah. Even Roger Corman probably learned and emulated some of the stuff from Hammer when he started making all the post cycle and all that stuff, right? I mean, it's clearly and he shot with than Hammer.
Well, yeah, I mean, Roger Corman had people like Francis Ford Coppola making their first films in Italy. Like he made like Dementia 13 and films like that, on a low budget. Like Corman had something else, that was being made and it was done, and he still had like 2 weeks of the crew and the equipment and maybe like $50,000 or so that he could spare, and he gives it to Coppola and says, "Okay, go shoot something," and he makes this low budget horror film in Italy, and it's comes out as Dementia 13,
Sure. And he did the same thing that Hammer did, which is reusing sets like The Terror with Boris Karloff. It's actually, they're using the same set.
A leftover set.
Yeah. The Raven, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they would shoot these movies back to back.
He would take different actors, like would be on one film, and he would take like Dick Miller and put him from some, contemporary movie, and he'd put him in this old movie, this old-fashioned movie, put him in tights, and, even though he didn't have long hair or nothing,
In that documentary about Hammer films, they mention how they shot 4 movies back to back using the same crew, same actors, and the same location, which was, I think, The Reptile, The Plague of the Zombies, and then a Dracula film and a Frankenstein film.
Yeah, and The Reptile and Plague of the Zombies, I love those. Those are really good. I love those.
Oh, actually, I think one of them is the Mad Monk Rasputin, played by Christopher Lee. Because he also falls into the ice that you see at the end of the second sequel.
Yeah, Rasputin's death. Right.
Yeah. So, I'd never seen The Plague of the Zombies. I heard good things about it.
It's very interesting. It's more on the take of the voodoo aspect of zombies. In other words, there's, it's like an Englishman who went to Africa, and when he comes back, he's got like all the trappings of voodoo stuff, like the idols and the drums, and there's either a cave or a mine or something where he sets all up a whole cult of with all the
Yeah, I mean that's what zombies were at the time. The idea of zombies as we know it in modern days just came with Night of the Living Dead, and from those movies on that they became ghouls.
Right, and this movie, The Plague of the Zombies, I believe it's in the same town and location as The Reptile. Like, in other words, The Plague of the Zombies is in this one little town, and it's all these, British, noblemen and men, who are above reproach, who are the voodoo priests and followers of this one nobleman who's like the leader of the cult, and they keep on making zombies, which pop up in the town and stuff. And so that's why it's called the Plague of the Zombies, is because it seems like a plague, like these people are infected by zombieism.
Some might say a pandemic. So this is a scene, I think this is from the book as well, because Lucy died. In the book it's Mina. But Lucy died, and now she's appearing as a white lady, and she's stealing kids, and they're rescuing the kid. And here's Lucy in the coffin with a mark of a cross on her forehead.
Yeah, burned into her forehead from the cross. I love that effect. I've used that trick myself, like where you start the shot with the cross already touching the forehead of the person, and the makeup is underneath the cross. And then you pull the cross away, and it looks like you in reverse, like you went and seared their forehead,
How do they make the smoke?
Well, you can have in the cross, the cross can be hollow, and there can be tubing that runs up your sleeve, and you can have like a cigarette or something,
little button or something on the cross where you can have it come out. Okay, yeah. See, that's why you're an effects artist.
Well, I've stolen these tricks and done them myself.
But isn't there another one where there's a two-part component where you put A on one side?
Oh, yeah. We have AB smoke, too, which is a chemical. You spritz it, clear liquid. You cannot see one on one prop, and then on the other prop.
So the forehead would have one component sprayed on it.
Well, that's if you're willing to do that. That's a chemical that's kind of costly.
And that's a makeup safe kind of thing, or is it just laying on the makeup so it's isolated?
It's tricky to use on a face or a forehead, so I'm pretty sure they did not use AB smoke to create a smoke effect for that.
Okay, yeah.
On my Dead Pit film, I did use AB smoke, and even the cameraman, he was like on a camera dolly, and he was hovering over the top. The camera was crabbing in, and as he moved with the lens of the camera up and top and over the thing that was coming off that smoke, he got some in his face, and I said to him later, like, man, I didn't want you to go over the top of that with your face like that.
Yeah. Oh, here's the defining moment when Lucy's going to get staked.
Yeah.
Boom. Oh, these screams of Hammer films and this blood. This is when Hammer started using Technicolor, right? The Technicolor technique.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was, the Technicolor camera is fascinating because it shot three reels.
The three strip process.
One of them had a red filter, the other one had a blue filter, and then was it a green one?
Well, I think they call it magenta, cyan, and cobalt or something like that.
Okay.
It's like, but
and then in the development process, they would make it they would overlay all three colors, calibrate them, and then you'd have these wonderful, vibrant colors.
Right. Believe it or not, unusually, those three colors mix to become the rainbow of colors. You can make any color from those
primary colors.
Yeah. And it's very vibrant. Yes.
The mark of the cross has disappeared from her forehead, and her eyes twitched a little bit.
In innocence and in hope, she has now been blessed again. Her soul will go, to heaven.
And had makeup put on. They always do. The wonderful land of movies where women sleep with their makeup on.
Yeah. And they don't have raccoon eyes.
Oh. Here you go, Arthur, old boy. Here's a little drink to stiffen you up.
Now, the one of the other interesting things about the Dracula films and the story and everything is, are you familiar with like we did a little research and we found out about originally, okay, there's the Bram Stoker book. Then there was the first black and white silent, ripoff of the book, which is the Nosferatu film with Murnau and Max Schreck playing the vampire. Then you go
Count
from that
Orlok.
To Mrs. Bram Stoker, after Bram died, she sued for the rights because they were infringing on his book copyright, and they won. And they destroyed all the prints of the original black and white Nosferatu, except for a few, I guess, because it survives to today. But she did win the court case, and they did destroy, piles of copies of the original black and white Nosferatu. Then what happens next is we go to the play version, the theatrical play version in Europe, in England. And it was seen by an American who then brought it to Broadway, brought it to America. And
where Lugosi became the vampire in the Broadway production, and then they transferred a lot of that to the movie.
The Universal.
That's why he's got the fancy, waistcoat and bow tie and all that stuff. That was the visual of the vampire in the Broadway play.
Right. And the guy who adapted the Broadway play, from the British version of the play, made some changes, and those changes sort of survived into the Universal Studios classic version with Bela, because he was seen on Broadway first, and so everybody thought wow, he'd make a great Dracula in the movie version,
And I want to apologize because I said earlier that I didn't think that they mentioned that Dracula was a foreigner, but they do. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. But so they do mention here they're tracking where Dracula came from and why he sleeps in a coffin of dirt. And they tracked him to Ingolstadt, which is in the Austro-Bavarian region. And they've gone to Ingolstadt, which still it's not Romania, but I guess they had access to German-looking sets, so that's why they decided to put Ingolstadt, which would also work for the Frankenstein movies.
Right. So, one of the cool things I think about these Dracula films is, although it was horrendous for poor Christopher Lee, are these contact lenses, these amazing glass contact lenses that they used to make.
Oh, yeah, the red ones.
Yeah, with the bloodshot eyes. I mean, that is so distinctive. Before this, with the color, nobody had ever done Dracula like this.
What kind of? Do you know what kind of stuff they would drip on people's eyes to make them bloodshot?
Well, I mean, because I'm blind, I've had all kinds of stuff done with my eyes, and I've owned many different contact lenses for theatrical use, in films. And there is a liquid that you can buy from, a makeup company. There's a company called Krylon, and they do sell a liquid of eye drops that you can put in your eyes, which makes it look like your eyes are red, blood in your eye. And also they have a black too. Like, if you ever seen the X-Files where they had the thing called the black liquid.
Yes, I remember.
It would go in people's eyes, sometimes they would use a combination of a black scleral contact lens, like the ones Doug grabbed
CGI,
for Pinhead, remember? Yeah. And so combined with physical contact lenses and then scenes where the black liquid can actually be drip dropped into your eye on the white part of your eye, and it's safe, they combine both of those with CGI as well,
Sure. Yeah, because there are scenes with Christopher Lee where he's clearly not wearing, to my knowledge, contacts, but he's got his eyes are all bloodshot and stuff, and he's got the dripping blood off the sides of his mouth.
Those are the contact lenses.
Well, the eyes that he has that are red, they're solid red. Those are the contacts.
No. The ones with veins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually something they put in his eyes to make him bloodshot.
No, those.
Because I know that there are shots where he has completely solid red eyes.
Right, those are contacts too. But,
the big ones, the big glass ones that cover most of your
veins. Yeah,
the half of your eyeball.
Yep. That's why he had such trouble, because he had to wear contacts a lot.
So here we are in Friedrichstrasse, and they're tracking Dracula back to Ingolstadt. And they just found out that he's hiding in a little white and gold coffin.
Yeah, and instead of going right to the address, they stop home first.
Yeah, they gotta have some tea, man. They're British. Tea.
Schnapps. Have some schnapps.
Have some schnapps with your tea. Peppermint schnapps. So in the O for Open Vein chapter, there's a double-page spread which says Count Dracula in the movies. And boy, oh boy, are there like dozens, hundreds maybe?
Oh, I know. Even Christopher Lee himself did another version of Dracula after, I think it was even after Hammer went out of business, where it was not a very good movie, but he got to do his way of doing Dracula. I think it was just straight out of the book, version. Have you found anything about that in your research?
I don't think so. No. So what's that again?
I think he played more of a like a Vlad Tepes type of Dracula. You know what I mean?
Christopher Lee
has just done the Walk of Shame.
Yeah, she's got a beautiful coat though, a beautiful cloak with
another fur color.
Another mink stole. Yeah, and the beautiful green that goes with her eyes. They're really good outfits in this. Yeah.
They knew that they were going to have Technicolor, so they really wanted to make the costumes color coordinated and stuff,
Oh yeah, I see the one you mean. There's one where he is dressed up like a Vlad Tepes with like a funny looking hat.
And, I've seen that film, well before I was blind, and it's not very good. It's slow. It's got bad production values,
It's called In Search of Dracula, I think.
Yeah, something like that. But, it's Christopher Lee. He really wanted it to be accurate to the Bram Stoker book,
He's got that big mustache. In Search of Dracula, the 1975 documentary about the Dracula legend narrated by and starring the legendary Christopher Lee. Apparently, it got a release in 2K Master from Kino Lorber. Wow. All right. And the cover says Christopher Lee, and then it says, "Believe the unbelievable. There really was a Dracula in Search of Dracula."
Yeah, I mean, he's done so many things that you can't even know them all. Like that's one of those ones that totally slipped by you.
Sure, yeah. And, eventually in his old age, he even recorded voice for heavy metal albums. Yeah.
He did a lot of voiceover work. I mean, I love...
No, I'm talking about records, like heavy metal records. Like there's one called Charlemagne.
Like Doug did on the Cradle of Filth and stuff.
Right. He recorded one called Charlemagne, where he's talking about, war and Charlemagne and conquest in his booming, thundering voice as Saruman.
Not to mention, like, tons of animation he's done voiceovers for, and like Doug, reading, novels and dramatic readings, like lots of Sherlock Holmes. He was a huge Sherlock Holmes guy,
I like this sequence where they're planning out, strategizing, looking at maps, and figuring out what they're going to do. That's that makes it a little more lively. That makes it more believable that they're actually hunting Dracula.
And she's like, "I don't want your dumb cross."
Wait, what does Mina not want to put on the cross?
She doesn't want to touch it at all.
She's been bitten already.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep, the walk of shame, right?
Yep. So
that's why she's wearing the long collar that hides the neck.
That's what you get for holding your hand out. He just dropped the cross into her hand and she caught it.
Ah!
Yeah.
There we go.
But when you're suspected of being a vampire, it's like, why don't they like start feeding you holy water and tie you down?
They did that in Lost Boys at dinner.
Oh yeah.
Dinner.
Garlic. No, they gave him garlic. There was a huge amount of raw garlic on the pizza slice that the kid gave to the head vampire. And he ate it too. He ate like a big mouthful of it and went like and spit it all out.
Yeah. See that the Vampire Hunters, that comedy? I think is it Roman Polanski? I don't know.
Oh yes, the Fearless Vampire Hunters. Actually, it's Roman Polanski's wife is in it. It's Sharon Tate is an actress in it.
Right.
She was killed, by the Mansons.
Yeah, that's a funny movie, though.
Yes.
I saw a little clip of James Herman.
And Carolyn Monroe's in that one, too.
I saw a little clip of the composer talking about how he created the theme for the Dracula film, and he's like, well, sometimes I go for the title, I listen to it, I see if there's anything that inspires me to do, and usually there is. And so for Dracula, he got on the piano and was like, here's how I made it. It was Dracula, dun dun dun. And it's funny because sometimes
you don't totally hear that in it.
You don't think that this is how they do it, but like I remember seeing Basil Polidouris one time talking about how he made the music for Conan the Barbarian. And it's like, it's amazing because he went on a piano and he also says, that music that he goes like, let me tell you of the days of high adventure, Conan the Barbarian. And it's like, he's doing the little notes and he's singing the story of the beginning. And I'm like, that's how he came up with a theme for the Conan the Barbarian. And it's like, that's amazing how they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucy sees Dracula standing on her living room.
Because he's been living in the basement.
In the crypt, down in the crypt.
But the boys
they're in the walls. But looking at the Open Vein chapter here, there's some movie titles that are really loopy. Like there's Billy the Kid versus Dracula in 1965.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you seen it?
Yep.
There's one called Mondo Keyhole, a.k.a. The Worst Crime of All, 1966. There's one called Batman Fights Dracula, 1967. I bet
that's a Filipino.
It could be. There's another one here called, let's see, Mga Manugang ni Dracula. And you were talking about how Nosferatu was the first production film. It wasn't.
Yeah.
There was a really early one that's completely lost. It was called Dracula's Death. And it was, it's completely
I know there
lost.
was one that Lon Chaney Sr. did. He dressed up as a vampire called, I believe that one's called Mark of the Vampire, which is a lost film.
Oh, that one's lost too, yeah. They made a reconstruction with the screenshots and captions.
Seen it. Yeah, I had a VHS tape recorded off of AMC, I think it was played on. I got a copy of it.
I saw it on TCM.
The cool thing about that Lon Chaney Sr. makeup is he's great looking as the vampire, but he's not a real vampire. He's dressed up in a costume. He's a detective portraying a vampire in the context of the story.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But it's still a great design of a makeup for a vampire.
It's funny because the first production on stage was actually directed and written by Bram Stoker. It was performed only once at the Lyceum Theatre in London.
Right.
It's just for securing the stage copyright for the material. It's kind of like what they do today. Like, let's just put the movie in one cinema so it can be like submitted for consideration for the Oscars or something.
Right. Or the way that they keep the copyright on something like Hellraiser by making a low budget quickie film.
Here's the blood transfusion scene.
Yeah, which was scientifically, advanced at the time. Of the novel, of the Bram Stoker novel. Is that in the novel, do you know?
I think it is, but one of the things that usually, is not believable is that you can't just like put someone else's blood without seeing if they're compatible. And I think at the time there was still kind of people didn't know that.
In the Coppola one, they show what's his name? Van Helsing, played by Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah,
and
he just lines up all three suitors, and he's like, come on, guys, roll up your sleeves. And like, you got to test if they're compatible.
He does.
With Mina.
He has a microscope, and he does check their compatibility in that movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
boy, are they lucky.
I remember hearing Roman Coppola, who was in charge of all the physical effects, like the shadow puppetry, which is very similar to the new Candyman. The way that in Coppola's Dracula, they do a whole bunch of shadow puppetry things.
Yeah, to tell the story. The story
war, of the battles.
Century, the Battle of Wallachia.
Peter Cushing was very determined to make these things believable. He used to say that if the actor doesn't believe what he's doing, then the audience is not going to believe it. So sometimes when he was playing Van Helsing or when he's playing Frankenstein, he would actually have in his little pockets the accoutrements of his own character, even if they weren't being shown on film. He just liked to have that believability. And when he made The Curse of Frankenstein, he actually went to talk to his PG, GP, his general practitioner, and asked him how would it work to make a brain transplant. That's the kind of stuff that he would research.
Right, or surgery in general, so that he knew
Yeah.
that his business, his physicality was believable, when he was performing a surgery or something.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that about, in a way that's what you might call method acting today, or, that sort of thing, but I believe it, I love it.
There is actually one Dracula sequel where the guy the little hero guy, the young man who's going to fight Dracula for the woman that's in peril, he is an atheist. And so that brings up a funny problem, which is he's an atheist, so he can't use the cross to control Dracula. So that's one of those things where they came up with a little twist there, which I think was interesting.
From Dusk Till Dawn brought that up too, right? That the priest had lost his faith, and so his holy water was no good.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he got his faith back in the battle.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Ashbury in Nightbreed. He's also a priest who lost his way, but then he finds his faith back in battle.
A defrocked priest. But you know what else is interesting is the thing about, the cross, or are you familiar with the George Hamilton as a vampire story? It's a comedy called Love at First Bite.
Love at First Bite, yes.
Well, in that film, Artie Johnson plays his sort of Renfield character.
Uh-huh.
And there is a scene where a Jew in New York has a cross, a Star of David. And it's used as a joke, where I'm afraid, because he's believes in it. It's
that would work.
His faith, he's got the cross,
That's interesting.
Star.
That is very interesting. Because yes, you would be able to push him away with the power of God that you believe in.
Right. I guess in the golden vampires, the 7 golden vampires, again, they use the yin and the yang, and they use the Taoist and, those Oriental religions to help fight vampirism in that movie.
Hang on. Here's the scene where Van Helsing is trapped in the basement with Dracula's coffin.
Yeah, he gets locked in, right?
Oh, there goes Gerda. She's not fired, but she got bitten. Oh, she wasn't bitten.
This is the kind of movie that I used to have a big bowl of popcorn.
Oh, shit. He just slapped the hell out of her. She was hysterical. And he's like, pow!
Back. Yeah, one quick smack to snap you out of it.
Yeah.
But, this is the kind of movie that I used to love to watch, on a Saturday on Creature Features with a big bowl of popcorn,
Oh, I love to watch these at night and just really focus on it. But it's amazing how they managed to get George Hamilton to look like he's not so tan to play a vampire.
Yeah, but he fit that tuxedo like a glove.
Sure. That is a funny movie.
It's so many vampire stories. So many, have you seen, the Mel Brooks one? Where it's Leslie Nielsen playing a vampire, and he's comedically playing the funny hair of the Coppola Dracula, the two big buns on his head.
Yeah. Oh, so funny. Yeah. It's weird when you see Leslie Nielsen in older movies where he was playing serious roles. You're always expecting something to happen that's going to be funny.
Right.
Like Forbidden Planet, I love.
Sure. Where he's this no-nonsense kind of scientist dude.
I know, and it's so funny because, there's all these other actors, the guy who plays Oscar Goldman, is one of his officers in Forbidden Planet.
And we got a little bit of a comic relief here with this guy. He's got a little gate, and he just finished tying it up and fixing it, and here comes another cart.
Blam!
That stupid face he makes.
They should have done the trick of 3, but then it would have just gone for laughs. Where the third thing is he just doesn't even close the gate. Just let him come on through.
Yeah.
Just put yakety sax on this sequence.
Oh god.
Yeah.
I
I don't think that, like MST3K or anything has ever spoofed these movies because they're just too good. It's like, although, they did do, like a really good movie, which was, Earth versus the Flying Saucers. I mean, no, they did,
Sure.
what was it? This Island Earth. They did. I love This Island Earth, and they did spoof that. But I don't think they've ever spoofed any of these Hammer, vampire, Christopher Lee, Dracula stuff.
There's Dracula. They found him. He's trying to run back into his castle.
Alive.
Yeah.
They
Here
started
comes.
shoveling dirt in on top of her, right?
Oh, damn. This is the final sequence. They're running into the castle. Dracula's running like whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah, like I was thinking, like, okay, what if he did bury her all the way, right? What was it like? I'm going to save this for later.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's that room that was the observatory, and the devil rides out with that crazy.
Oh yeah, the top story
mosaic
the
on the floor. Yeah.
The top story of that house,
Which also has Vincent Price, Christopher Lee. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
which also is the same, house from Rocky Horror, like you say, and that is like the observatory up on the top of Rocky Horror.
With a transsexual Transylvanian scientist.
Right. From
here he's playing possum. Like, he's trying to strangle him, and Peter Cushing kind of rolls his eyes, puts out his tongue, like, oh.
And Dracula's like, well, that was easier than I thought.
Yeah. And he goes, pow! Get off me.
He should have stabbed him with a stake. That's what I was expecting to happen right there.
But he's got the candlesticks. Those make a good cross and a pinch.
Yeah.
Cushing looks really good with his messed up hair and that fancy jacket and gloves. He looks really young in this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really some rough and tumble, stunt acting here, boy.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I always thought about. Oh, there he is. He pulled the curtain down and
the beam of sunlight.
Foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Its foot turns to oatmeal,
Yeah. So there's an extended sequence of this because there were a lot of cuts, and one of the cuts was to his face dissolving. And back in like the early 2000s, some guy found in Japan these reels that had the facial disintegration. Yeah. And I found them on YouTube.
His hand becomes skeletal.
Yeah, see, I watched this stuff, and I watched, Raiders of the Lost Ark and all the other movies where a body, decomposes like this and stuff to try and learn how to do stuff like this for my own sequence in my Dead Pit film.
Yeah, the version I'm watching is the BFI restoration. So they put back that scene where instead of just cutting, the face, like you see like Dracula like clawing at his face and pulling out the skin.
And his hair comes off. His hair comes off.
That's not in the
HBO Max.
HBO Max one, no.
And then he comes down to a skull, and then to nothing.
We saw that part was in there.
And then the wind blows the dust away.
Yeah, just empty clothes. What a world! What a world!
What's that from?
Wizard of Oz.
Oh, right.
Who would have thought it could?
Another famous Technicolor movie.
Yeah, and another famous disintegration.
Yeah. And they're like Dead Pit. You have the ring left.
Is Dracula's signet ring.
Yeah, like we did something similar in my film, The Dead Pit, where at the very end, the guy who dissolves into a pile of goo has a ring left as well.
Oh. Was that an homage?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I didn't write the film.
Yeah.
My director.
But I figured you know better than anyone else I know.
The director was also...
I mean, the whole film is a homage, actually. Yeah. I could point to just about every single piece of it and show you where it's a homage to something else, From lighting to writing to everything.
And that's the end of the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
red lettering.
This wonderful Hammer tendency to put gore back into these movies because the Universal movies didn't have a lot of gore. To the scream queens and the really loud screaming that they would put into these movies. And then, of course, like you said, when there's rough and tumble, it's rough and tumble. Like, that they really feel like they're like tackling each other and rolling on the ground and, you know, all that stuff. Especially Christopher Lee does that.
Yeah, this frail old man is doing these stunts, climbing on tables, grabbing candelabras, you know, lunging at drapes and yanking.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sweating his butt off.
He's so skinny, you know, his face looks like a skull. You know, that's one of the cool things about him. Like when he plays Grand Moff Tarkin, he just looks like death head guy, you know.
He was, I think, 30, 40. He was 45 years old when he did this movie. So, yeah, he's kind of my age.
But at the same time, you know, he looks like he could play any age. You know, he could play like 70, 80. He could play 45. You know, he's amazing.
He and Christopher Lee were both jumping over furniture and railings.
Yeah.
Yep, they would. Some people always
dignity,
look like they were old.
You know, his quiet dignity, you know, like just his delivery of lines and stuff, you know, he brought the other actors up, you know, to their higher level, you know, when he was working with them, you know.
100%, yeah. But, that was the amazing horror of Dracula for Americans, or just Dracula if you're in Britain listening to this thinking, why do Americans have to always change our titles?
Well, for the Hammer films, a lot of them were somewhat financed by AIP sometimes. So, you know, you'd get the rights to release it in America, and therefore they could change the title or edit it or whatever, because they help finance the actual production.
That's right. Yeah. But what a cool movie. This was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Good old popcorn film.
James Bernard's music, always so bombastic in all these like Hammer films. And
I love the music. Yeah, it's really good. I have the soundtrack albums to a lot of these films.
Yeah, I found out yesterday that there's a whole Spotify playlist called, for the whole like soundtracks of the Hammer films and stuff. So that's really cool.
Yep, the 65th of the 163 Hammer films.
That's
yeah. I mean, when Mina returns after her night with Dracula. Nina, you said something like, she's doing the walk of shame. Here's what Terrence Fisher had to say. Terrence Fisher believed, my greatest contribution to the Dracula myth was to bring out the underlying sexual element in the story. He, Dracula, is basically sexual. At the moment he bites, it is the culmination of a sexual experience. According to Fisher, Dracula preyed upon the sexual frustrations of his woman victims. The Holmwood marriage was one in which she was not sexually satisfied, and that was her weakness as far as Dracula's approach to her was concerned. In the scene where Mina returns after a night with Dracula, Fisher's directions to the actress were frank and ambiguous. When she arrived back after being away all night, she said it all in one close-up at the door. She'd been done the whole night through, please. I remember Melissa Stribling, the actress, saying, Terry, how should I play the scene? So I told her, listen, you should imagine you had one whale of a sexual night, the one of your whole sexual experience. Give me all that in your face. So, yeah, that's what it seems
like.
In
other words, like Julia.
Happy but embarrassed.
The best fuck of her life.
Right. What a woman would do for a good fuck.
Bleep that. No.
Right. I mean, that's the motivation of Julia and Hellraiser. It's he gave that note, that acting note to her,
And here's something you might be interested in knowing, because you always like to talk how these things are done. So in the shot that was restored, where Dracula's skin is decaying and peeling away, they said here in the Wikipedia page that this was accomplished by putting a layer of red makeup on Lee's face and then covering his entire face with a thin coating of mortician's wax, which was then made up to conform to his normal skin tone. When he rakes his fingers across the wax, it reveals the raw marks underneath. This sequence was restored for the 2012 Blu-ray release. Yeah.
That's cool. Does it say who the makeup artist was? Was it Roy Ashcroft or Ashton? Yeah,
the makeup department says Philip Leakey, makeup artist as Phil Leakey, Harry Montsash, hairstylist, and Roy Ashton as assistant makeup artist, uncredited.
Phil Leakey and Roy Ashcroft or Ashton or whatever were the two British guys that did all the Hammer films. They did the Frankenstein, they did the Mummy, they did this, they did all of them.
They were always working there at Bray Studios and Hammer. I think that the guy, one of the main head honchos at Hammer, I saw in that Hammer, the studio that dripped blood, one of the screenwriters was saying, I don't think I ever saw Mr. Carreras, because it was one of the guys who was the owner of Hammer, says, I don't think he ever visited the studio in our 15 years more than 6 times. I think every time he came over, he saw like 28 people standing around and only 5 or 6 working. He would get a little concerned. Why was he paying all these people to just stand around? But that's how movies are made, right?
Right. And if he didn't know that.
Yeah. He'd be like, these people should be working. It's like, well, they already did their job. Now they're just waiting for the shot.
Lighting people to be done.
You know what reminds me a lot, of the Hammer films is the same way that the first Hellraiser movie was made, where it was made in a little building, that was near a duck pond and near a pub, a bar, where they used to have to hear the truck back up with the beep, beep, beep to deliver the kegs of beer and stuff to the bar. And that could be heard on their film, when they were recording. And the ducks could be heard on their recording. And, the building where they shot, the 55 Ludovico Street and stuff, was right around the corner from where that little studio room building was, And, it's very much like the way Hammer was, where Hammer was this little studio around a couple of like old house buildings and stuff and some land, which they would use for the settings of a lot of the films,
Yeah.
The cool thing is that, American companies were helping to finance the Hammer films, or else a lot of these would not have gotten made,
Of course, yeah. These were the money makers.
Yeah, so thank goodness, because they knew that they had a market in America, that once they made this film, they would release it all over the world, including America, Well, this is going to kick off the Halloween season for us.
Hell yeah, I know people who start buying stuff for Halloween back in August. That's
Yep. If you're making a costume that's elaborate, you're starting it already.
Sure. O is for Open Vein. Get the book. Watch the show, Clive Barker's A through Z of Horror. He has some really good recommendations for movies that have influenced and impressed Clive Barker as he grew up. And this was O for Open Vein. So thanks for watching this movie with us, guys.
Yeah.
Yay.
And, coming next, we'll be doing Jericho Squad 77. We'll be covering Clive Barker Illustrator 2. And we'll have more news episodes coming up.
And tell us about your Halloween ideas out there.
Yeah. Let us know. Comment on the blog, comment on the Facebook page. I think, Ryan, you put up a poll asking people what sort of stuff they would like to see from us. And there's been some answers, right?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to mention that. It's what are your favorite types of episodes? And I listed 5 types of episodes that we do just to see what people like the most.
And
so, we'll
results?
see how that goes. And that's in the Occupy Midian group on Facebook. And I was also meaning to get that onto Twitter as well, but I haven't done that yet.
Sure
cool.
thing.
Watch
So everybody go and answer those questions, everyone. Let us know.
And smash the like button.
Subscribe. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. Watch for our annual Kickstarter fundraisers to get some cool stuff, and you can buy t-shirts on our TeePublic store. Go to tpublic.com and search for BarkerCast.
Thanks for listening.